Hi guys. Um, do you remember the story of the Austrian man who imprisoned his daughter for 24 years? Um, Someone Frizzle, and in 2014, I think the story broke because this woman who had lived in captivity and been raped constantly by her father has finally uh, escaped. Her story is out there in the world. She's got 7 children from this abusive situation with her own father. Such a horrible, horrible story. And because she's got these 7 children who have lived without sunlight, they've been locked up basically their entire lives. Uh, the story of that man inspired a novel. That was 2004, I think, when the story of Frizzle broke. Yeah, not 14. So, and that story inspired the character in this novel that I want to talk about today. So today we're going to be reading Room by Emma Donoghue. And this novel is fantastic. It's told from the perspective of a 5-year-old boy, and his name is Jack, and it's just such heart-rending storytelling about living in a room with his ma. And when the story begins, Jack, who's only used to this life inside this room, in this cubicle where he shares with his mother, the only other human being he's got any sort of connection to, apart from Nick, who comes at night when he has to hide in the cupboard, and uh, he brings them food, rapes his mother, and whatnot. And at that point, he, because he's a child, doesn't realize that it was a kidnap situation. So in this profoundly affecting book, Emma Donoghue tells the story of this horrific kidnap and this horrific man who perpetrates it, and as well as the little child and his mother whose lives were affected by this. So Jack, of course, is a product of the rape on his mother, who's been kidnapped for a long time, and is hiding in this room where this old man keeps her. And it's just the only thing in this room is just a small kitchen space. There's a TV, and Jack's mother has tried her best to make him feel safe by trying to let him understand that this was indeed, what the world was, and everybody else who didn't live in the room lived on TV. And she just tried her best, in giving what she had to work with to raise her child to be normal, if there's any sort of normalcy to be had in that kind of situation. So in this deeply, deeply moving story, we see that Ma has been in captivity for 7 years. Ma has been in captivity for 7 years, and in these 7 years, she's had a child, of course, which means maybe in the first 2 years she had this child, and now she devotes her life to trying to raise her child. And so a week after Jack's 5th birthday, we then Ma realizes that Nick is in deep financial troubles and the house might be foreclosed. And she also thinks that this man, who's tried his best to hide them for 7 years, would definitely prefer to have them killed. Instead of, if this house is taken over, allowing them to escape. So she decides to find a way to escape with her child. And what she does next is epic. So she then has her child help, while still trying to preserve his innocence, and not let him know the true circumstances, their true circumstances. And so she sort of convinced old Nick to that Jack was really ill, that he was dying, and he needed medical care and whatnot. And of course, the old monster refuses to help, and so Ma has to do something drastic, and then tell old Nick that Jack is dead. And so pretends that Jack is dead, folds him up in a rug, and old Nick takes him out in that rug, and then he runs and talks to a stranger for help. This little boy has never had any contact with another human being in his life, and so he gets help and somehow leads the police to this particular room. In the end, Nick is of course arrested, and he's going to spend his whole life in prison. And but now the story then turns to Jack trying to navigate life outside of that room, trying to survive, not really understanding how human beings were. Because Ma is reunited with her family. They're so ecstatic about the idea of having Jack being one of them. They try their best to show him love, but I mean, he's not used to being with so many people. So there's issues of mental health. They're trying to navigate, life with other people. Ma is trying to get reintegrated into society after this horrible thing has happened to her, and the two of them are taken to a mental hospital, and they receive medical evaluations, move on to a temporary home, and I mean, the story is twofold. One of the parts is describing this horrible kidnap. The second part is showing how do people actually survive horrific things like this and get back into society. And in the end, Jack only wants to return to the room. This is the only place he knows. This is the only place he feels safe, and he wants to go back there. But thankfully, because Ma is struggling with her own mental health, she goes back to mental clinics, and then later they get into independent living, assisted by the government, and but Jack's limited experience with dealing with human beings continue to pose a problem every step of the way for him in this journey to becoming a full human being, to understanding how to live with other people. So, and through these struggles, they keep struggling until and Ma keeps trying to help him. There's a really heartbreaking place towards the end of the novel where Jack tells Ma, the grandmother says, there are still people like him out there. There's still a lot of people like him, referring to their captor. So heartbreaking. And, the fact that this little boy is beginning to understand the sort of world where he lives, the harshness, the fact that there are wicked people, there are monsters, and there's evil inherently in people, and he's trying at this very early stage to sort of understand that. That's really heartbreaking. Well, Jack is growing and also evolving as his world is expanding. It's more people he's meeting and just trying to get it all in. But it's always a struggle because he's not used to this. But finally, Jack, keeps pressing until Ma takes him back to the room. And thankfully, when he goes there, he doesn't feel any sort of emotional attachment to that place anymore. And he's able to sort of say his goodbyes and leave, and this is symbolic because it shows sort of this the point where he detaches himself from this situation, from this hardship, this thing that has happened to him that would have marked his entire life, but it's not going to, because it's not going to give him going to give it that power. So finally, I'd like to read the very last page. And that's where they're in the room trying to let go. And so he says, okay, I need to go now. I walk to bed wall and touch it with one finger. The cork doesn't feel like anything. It's good night in the day. Huh? Can we say good night when it's not night? And Ma says, I think it will be goodbye. Goodbye, wall. Then I say to 3 other walls. Then goodbye, floor. Above bed. Goodbye, bed. I put my head down and under bed to say goodbye, egg snake. In wardrobe, I whisper, good night, goodbye, wardrobe. In the dark, there's the picture of me Ma did for my birthday. I look very small. I wave her over and point to it. I kiss her face where the tears are. That's how the sea tastes. I pull the me picture down and zip it into my jacket. Ma's nearly at door. I go over. Lift me up? Jack, please. Ma sits me up on her hip. I reach up. Higher. She holds me by my ribs and lifts me up, up, up. I touch the start of the roof. I say goodbye, roof. Ma puts me down. Thump. Goodbye, room. I wave up a skylight. Say goodbye. I tell Ma. Goodbye, room. Ma says it but on mute. I look back one more time. It's like a crater, a hole where something happened. Then we go out the door. Um, this is a really, really deep story. I mean, I'm fascinated by what happens in the minds of these people. The Garridos of this world, the man who with his wife kidnapped Joseph Dugard, one of the longest uh, kidnaps in US history, where this woman is held for 18 years by this man, and she begins to think of herself as a member of his family. There's also the Smart case. There's just all kinds of different cases where people just pick up other people's children and just continue to raise them as their own, even though they're kidnapped. I read a book, I think it was autobiographical when I was growing up. It's called I Know My First Name is Stephen. It's written by Stephen, somebody who was also kidnapped as a child. He kept struggling until he finally committed suicide. So there's a lot of an horror of this part of humanity to be found in this book. And it's not just how dangerous and how horrifying it is to be someone who's passed through this, but also to try to reintegrate into society, to understand that what happened was a crime for this person who has survived. So questions of survival, questions of why do these things happen, and what can we do, to make sure that these sorts of people I brought a book. So everyone should be busy. Jack is 5, so obviously there's beautiful, beautiful language, the sort of way that you would expect a child to speak. Please find it and read it, and let's talk about it. Thank you so much for listening. If you've got any questions, any comments, please leave them. Please share. And if you haven't done so, please subscribe. And I will see you in the next video. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.